A wholehearted welcome to all delegates present online and our first speaker, Dr. Indu Kaur ma'am. It's given me immense pleasure to introduce an eminent personality in pharmacy field, Dr. Indu Kaur ma'am. Ma'am is currently working as professor, chairperson of University Institute of Pharmaceutical Science, Panjab University. She is among top 2% most cited scientists across the globe as per Stanford University, USA. Her research field is enhancing bioperformance of drug bioperformance of the drug, plant extract, phytopharmaceuticals, and biomolecules like siRNA, protein, peptides, probiotics using active tailored solid lipid nanoparticles, nanovesicles, and electrosperm scaffolds. Her group has worked extensively on novel platform nanotechnology to overcome delivery challenges of molecules like antifungal, antitubercular, retinoids, anti-glaucoma medications, and posterior eye delivery for AMD and diabetic retinopathy. She has produced 31 PhD and 58 postgraduate and has received funding of around 100 billion INR from government and industry. She has delivered more than 75 invited talk and published around 155 articles with H index of 49. She has 8 books and more than 25 book chapters to her credit. She is US Fulbright Fellow in 2017-18 and was awarded with Women Scientist Award and was awarded with Women Scientist Award in 2018 by Organization of Pharmaceutical Producers of India OPPI. She was graced with BRIC Technology Exposition Award consecutively for 2 years in 2019 and 2020. She is Researcher of Year Award in 2019 and 2022 by Sun Pure Research Incubation Center. She also won the Grand Innovation Challenge conducted by Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance in November 2021. She has received funding for Project Beamtime application at ISIS facility Rutherford Appleton Laboratory UK in 2020 in 2017 and 2023. Emphasis of her work lies on industrial and clinical translation and is reflected through licensing of for her technology to pharmaceutical, biotechnological, and dermatoceutical industry. She has filed 33 patents, out of which 13 was granted, one in US also. Most recently, Dr. Kaur has awarded with prestigious National Intellectual Property Award in 2021 and in 2022 for being top Indian individual for patent filing, grant and commercialization. She also has WIPO Medal for Investor conferred by World Intellectual Property Organization. With this very short introduction, I welcome ma'am to this EFDP and ESTP. Without wasting much time, I'm handovering this online platform to you, ma'am. Please start your session.
Thank you so much for your very kind introduction. And it is again a privilege to connect with so many of you. At the outstart, I regret that we couldn't, connect with my slides. So the technology has made life easier that all of us could connect today. At the same time, it has its own glitches, which probably we are not. Equipped to manage. I wouldn't say the technology has any issues. It is just us who are learning, constantly learning, and that's one of my message. We as teachers are always learners. So I thought you will have several talks during this FDP program on research proposal and manuscript writing. So I have tried to keep my talk general today, just to let you in on certain nuances of research proposal, manuscript writing, and then subsequently translating the research into products, or maybe into to reach the society, the physician, the industry, and all of that. So next slide, please. So I think for like at the start of it, what we need is to have a scientific attitude, to think, to think and ask questions, and develop observational skills. I feel observation is one key thing which a researcher must possess: keen observation. Next slide, please. So this is something which I really feel science is fun, science is curiosity, and we must all have curiosity. We must all feed our curiosity, and we must investigate to feed our curiosity, ask questions, answer questions, pose more questions: whys, wherefores, hows. And just delving into those questions and trying to find answers is what science is, what research is, and that's what we are going to talk today. Next. So why do we do research? So it could be one or several of these reasons when we step into research. It could be to, solve a question, to face a challenge. And of course, I feel this intellectual joy should always be connected with science, with research, with asking questions. Then, as a pharmacist, we are one of the primary patient care providers, and so we always work for improving the quality of life of the patient, relieve the patient from debilitation, reduce mortality and morbidity, or maybe bring products at lower cost to the society. Thanks. So, for any research to be successful, for any manuscript to be good, for any research proposal to fetch funding, I think it has three elements in it. And the first element is always reading. And you would see during my entire presentation, I lay a lot of emphasis on read, 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 and read. And there is no alternative to reading. So, as we know, research is always an endeavor to finding answers to intellectual or practical problems. So it could be a basic research, or it could be an applied research by application of scientific methods. And again, another thing which I would like to highlight here is that research is systematic, and we are trying to find those answers from the nature, which is highly organized and systematic. And I would always, equate research with something like a religious journey. You have to have that passion, and you have to have that commitment to research. It is an attitude, an experience, and a journey. Next. So, as I said, it is systematic, it is organized, and the key is to ask questions. It is always central to any research. And the answer could be positive or negative. There is always a null hypothesis which we propose and move forward. Next. So, again, you have to not stop asking questions. As a mentor, as a teacher, और एज अ टीचर हमें अपने स्टूडेंट्स को भी यही प्रमोट करना है कि आस्क क्वेश्चंस, challenge yourselves, always have aggressive discussions, arguments, counter arguments. So unless we develop that attitude, that scientific temperament, we will never be able to do good research, good science. And again, I just have to say that probably that could be one thing which we are lacking in India, and that is something which holds us back, is to be argumentative in our research. Next. So this is how a normal research process has to flow. So you would see in my next slide as well. So it is something like a broad base from where you would start, and that would be your background information, the prior art, the literature pool, or the patent research or search, when we try and see what is already existing. So that would help us, one, to understand what is happening, what is science, how it has processed in that particular area. And the second thing this would do is help us to identify the research gaps, help us to ask the questions which need to be answered. And that is very important. You need to identify the existing lacunas, the gaps, the places where you need to have answers. It could be that you have a molecule which is not stable. It could be that you need a new molecule for a disease. It could be a new target for a disease. It could be having a molecular marker. It could be diagnosis of the disease. It could be a early diagnosis of a disease. So it could be n number of things, but you can only identify those gaps if you delve into the prior art which is existing. And from here, then you get a hypothesis, you propose a hypothesis, you do the, it is like a research envisaged for your program, for your research, for your manuscript. So whether you write a proposal or you write a manuscript, you have to have this in a manuscript also. The introduction includes all of it, the prior art, the gaps, and what you are trying to achieve, what is your research. And you always end your introduction in your manuscript with the hypothesis you are proposing. So after having a hypothesis, then this is a practical aspect. Many a times, when we are sitting in institutes which have limited resources, limited funds, limited infrastructure, we always feel कि हमारे पास तो अवेलेबल ही नहीं है फैसिलिटीज, तो हम रिसर्च नहीं कर सकते. I feel that is again a mental block. That is what I talked about in the inauguration. We have to overcome those mental blocks. रिसर्च को हमेशा कॉम्प्लेक्स होना जरूरी नहीं है, रिसर्च को हमेशा तोड़ू होना जरूरी नहीं है. You just are looking at the answers, and that is also your contribution. If you can simplify the methodology, if you can develop newer models, if you can break your research gaps into smaller questions and try answering them one at a time. So for that, you have to have a what should I say, a checklist, or a mental check, that what resources do you have, and based on those resources, then you plan your methodology. And again, here I always want to highlight that there is a difference between the methods and the methodology. So methods are what you're doing, what experiments you are performing, and methodology is the principle why you are doing that experiment, why you are putting up those controls, what is your experimental, I would say, the uh, different groups. They could be treatment groups, they could be your um, delivery groups, they could be your scaffolds for new drug discovery. So why you are selecting those, and how you would perform that experiment to reach at an answer to the question you have asked. So that would all be methodology. So once you have the methodology in place, then you try and generate the data or the results. And then again, here I would say that to keenly observe your results, to look for results which you were not expecting, or which could be a chance discovery. We always talk of serendipity in discovery, in research. And what is that serendipity? That is just a keen observation of one of the scientists who was performing the experiments and suddenly found that something is happening which he or she was not expecting. So that is possible only if we have keen observation. And when we talk of folklore, when we talk of uh, things, so we are always talking of phytochemicals, we are always talking of natural molecules, we are talking of the diets and their role, which we in India we are rich about it. And what is all that? I think that is all observational data which our forefathers observed and maybe documented. So you need to have that keen observation. So once you have those results in hand, then you match them with your hypothesis. So either it proves your hypothesis or it disproves. Either you get the results you were expecting, and there could be situations n number of times when you do not get the results you were expecting. And now is the I would say the testing time. As a researcher yourself, or as a teacher or a mentor, at that time you need to sit down with your data, with your student, look at the results, try and see. One thing, first thing which you need to do at this moment is to check the reproducibility of your results, whether it was something like it happened once and it was an error which happened. So if you have reproducible results, then you go back and look at your methodology. So did you devise or design a suitable experimental design which actually could answer your questions, or was there a flaw? So in case you identify a flaw there, then you redesign your methodology and then reperform your experiments. And now after this, if still you get those, you still get the results which you were not expecting, then I think we need to explain our results. And or there could be situations where you just report the negative results, and we should not shy away from reporting or documenting the negative results. We already have some journals, even like from publication houses like Elsewhere, which just report negative results. There are journals which have been set up for this. Why? Because that is also a contribution to the scientific community when you are giving negative results. Now see, the intellect or the thought process, you cannot say कि वो सिर्फ मेरी बपौती ही है, या मैं ही इतना capable हूँ कि मैं ही सोच पाई वो questions, या उस तरह के experiments मैं ही design कर पाई. ये सोचना I think बहुत ही narcissist होगा. So what is there is that probably several people across the globe, when you look at the historical, when we do study history, historical background of any science. So there you would see that several people across the globe were performing similar type of experiments and coming up with similar results, and that is how the theories came up. So I would feel that that is a contribution to another group or groups who are thinking or planning to do similar experiments. You can at least tell them, or the message can be picked up by those groups that these type of experiments or this type of thought process is not giving you the answers. So they can always try alternative methods or alternative experiments or alternative questions. So that in itself is a contribution. So rather than, I feel integrity in science and sincerity to science is very, very, very important. And that is one, at times Indian scientists and Indian science is looked at by in apprehension by the world, because they feel that we tend to play with our data. So this is one message I want to convey to all of you, that please do not play with your data. Please be sincere to science and the data you produce, and please try and document it. There is no harm in getting negative results. And most of the times, we find answers even though that was not what we were expecting. So, I think I have another slide which says research. So, research is not something exactly new, it is just something which is already existing in nature, but we did not know the answer and we are trying to find those answers. So, what I want to assure you here is that most of the times, either in the literature pool or maybe somewhere else in some other scientific discipline or in some other area, you would see that the answer was already existing. You just needed to look at that place. So that is how you should think at the research. Next slide, please. So it is like an hourglass. So you start from a very broad base, that is your reading, that is your literature pool, that is your background, that is your prior art. And then based on that, you identify a research question. That is where you have the neck of the hourglass, the narrow part. So you have narrowed down to one, two, or three questions. And then you again have a broad base, which is your data. And based on that data, then you can conclude or generalize. Next. So I would just try and intercalate my discussion with what I have learned across my career span of almost I would say 40 years or 35 years or so. Next slide. So when I started my career, once I did my masters, I was like, I think most of the students at this moment, maybe, and maybe some of you teachers might also have had a similar experience. I did masters in pharmaceutics, and I thought this is the end of it, and I never thought of research as a career and not PhD. But I graduated. I did my master's somewhere in 1987 from Chandigarh, which was which though a modern but a small city, and we did not have much pharmaceutical industry in and around Chandigarh at that time. The boys in my class would always move to cities like Aurangabad, Bombay, and so forth, and would start a career. But being a girl, it was a limitation, and though my parents, they were very supportive, and they never distinguished between me as a girl and my brother as a boy, but still there were some societal reservations, and my father never wanted me to go outside of Chandigarh. And UIPS was a very beautiful research institute and in Haven, and he suggested, why don't you start your PhD here? I did some for some time in an area of immunology at Institute of Microbial Technology, but then I got my break in pharmaceutical sciences, and I started doing my PhD. After my PhD was in a different area on mutation research, mutagenicity testing, and things like that. But when I entered into teaching, and I had to start my research career, so I thought I'll go into core pharmaceutics. And at that time, drug delivery and new drug delivery was coming up. My husband was an ophthalmologist, and that is when I got an interest in ocular drug delivery. So why research? So many a times you have some clinically relevant questions, as I said, or it could be some family stimulus, or a family which is suffering from a disease, so things like that. So that is when I started into ocular drug delivery. At that time, I don't think in India there were many formulation scientists in ocular drug delivery, and for that matter, even today you mostly have ocular pharmacologists or ophthalmologists working in research, but there are very few formulation scientists. And similarly, there are very few drugs which are designed to for ocular delivery. Most of the drugs, they were designed for oral or any other applications, and then they were developed for ocular delivery. And there are constraints to ocular delivery, and there is a specific, I would say, space for a formulation scientist. So when I started my career, so this is what I want to highlight here, is that whenever you step into a new area, so literature, read, it comes again. And when you are doing that literature search and reading, it is always good, that is what I do, that you start writing a review. And when you review the literature, you would go through the entire literature, and you would get a feel of it, and you would be able to identify questions. And at that time, I wrote two reviews in drug development and industrial pharmacy. At that time, I never realized I am writing a good review. But the amazing thing was, one of those reviews was, so both those reviews are very highly cited, and maybe this 250 is a earlier number, so maybe the number is even more. And one of this reviews is cited in Goodman Gilman. We all understand what Goodman Gilman is to us, and what it means to be cited in Goodman Gilman. So the chapter on ocular pharmacology, one of my reviews is cited there. So, And then this reading, this culture of reading, this actually, triggered, it was a stimulus for me to think, to try and answer questions and to look at solutions. And then this motivated me to write projects. So I'm talking of the times, that is 95 or so, when there were no computers in our institute. We had to go out, get it typed from a specialist, and then there were no online submissions of projects, and there were no forms or formats available even for these funding agencies. So you had to try and catch hold of a form, you would type it, and then you had to print 20 or 25 copies and send them to the funding agencies for funding. So we've come a long way. So I don't know, you all are, I'm sure, young. So when I did my master's, that was the first time we heard of computers, and our teacher would tell us what is input device, what is output device, what is a printer. So this is from where we started, our generation, my generation. So that was the, in masters we were first time introduced to computers. Next. But so what I, as a life lesson, what I would say is, let nothing limit you, let it be a challenge. So I submitted a project to UGC, and I got my first grant in 2001. Then this DST serve fast track for young scientists, now I think it has a different name. So this plan came up for the first time in 2002 or something. And there still, I don't think we have a discipline in pharmaceutical sciences. So I applied under the engineering category for a project on ocular delivery, and I was called at Surat to present before a panel, which was a panel of more than 15 people who were evaluating me, and amongst them the chairman, as well as another one of the panelists. They were directors from IITs, and several of the applicants who were competing with me were also IITians. So it was um, I would say, I did fear, I did have apprehensions, but what kept me going was that I had done my homework, I had done the literature search, and I had identified a research gap which I could, get across to the panelists, and could, actually emphasize that this is an important research gap, and I would be able to answer this if I get this funding. So that type of a drive can come only when you do your homework. Read, 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 and read. Next. Next, please. So again, what I want to say here is that many a times we as researchers are also trained as, I would say, we are not trained as researchers or scientists, and maybe we are not training the next generation as scientists because we are not training them to ask questions. We are just training them to produce data. So producing data is a technician's job. It is not the scientist's job. Scientist is who asks questions, who looks at the data, analyzes them, and finds answers. So analysis of the data, answering questions is what science or research is all about. So when you are just producing data, you are like a photocopier. You are not exploring. You are not, um, what should I say? You are not actually, challenging yourself or unfolding your potential. You are limiting yourself. So, what I would say is research, writing manuscripts, getting published, getting funding is, of course, a struggle. It is, of course, hard work, but it is not Sisyphean. So, I don't know how many of you have heard about Sisyphus. So, Sisyphus was a king. It is a mythology, Greek mythology, where they say that he annoyed King Zeus by defeating death. So, he captured the god of death, and as a result on earth deaths would not happen, and this annoyed the gods. So he was punished by one of the gods, where he was asked to roll a big boulder, a big stone, uphill. And when he would reach the top, by a trick, that stone would roll back. So that was a trick put in by the gods, so that he was punished and he would keep rolling and it would keep coming back. So what I want to say here is that it is a struggle, it is hard work, but it is not something which is wasteful. It is always fruitful. And it is not something which Sisyphus was doing, rolling up and coming down. So you would always reach the tip of the iceberg, and you would always go to the other side to answer your questions if you're working hard. Next. So, what are the components of a good research proposal or manuscript? So, I just want to, put together what we've said is that you first try and identify what is already known, which could be prior art, which could be knowledge base, which could be just, trying to ask questions about your topic. And in that topic, there could be multiple facets. For example, I am from pharmaceutics. So one would be the disease state. I would talk about the disease state. Then I would talk about the delivery system. Then I would maybe talk about the molecule I'm doing. So all of this, a brief about all of them, and siphoning down to what questions I'm asking. So that would then form the second part, where I would state my hypothesis, and then I can explain why we do not know it. So this is a research gap. It could be a methodological issue. It could be other issues. And then describe how I would do it, and end up with my result and discussion, where I found the answers and, the conclusions. Next. So here I would like to say that Addison had four principles. The first is something which I love the most, is do not be discouraged. Keep trying. Try again. So we've heard about, I'm sure all of us in our younger times, we have read the story of King Robert Bruce, where he was, defeated by the enemy, and he was scared, and he ran into the woods, and he was hiding in a cave, where he found a spider which was trying to rise up its web. It was hanging from a thin web thread, and it was trying to climb to the rooftop. And he would fall back again. The spider would fall back again, then it would try again to climb, and it kept trying till it could reach the roof. And that actually was maybe a eureka moment for that king, that he realized that you have to try again. So he again recollected his army, and he went back, fought, and recaptured his kingdom. So keep trying. Try again till you are successful. And then try and learn with both your head and hands. Many a times we stop working in the laboratory, so we need to do that. And not everything is there in the books. Reading is important, but try and experience the world also, and try to develop a connect, the theory and the practical. So many a times there are so many things which are happening in our day to day life, which actually, make us realize that what we were thinking, or what we are doing, or what research we are doing. So I always tell my students, when we are talking of the importance of incubation temperatures and the inoculum, so I always give an example कि घर में mothers जो हैं आपके दही जो है curd जो है जमाया जाता है, so they always put a inoculum into it, the khatta into it. And then in winters, our mothers, they would put the bowl or the donga in maybe आटे के टीन में it would be put, or in now we put it in a casserole. And now you have newer incubators, where which are electrical devices, which would maintain a temperature of 37 or so, so that the inoculum can grow and produce curd. So there are so many experiences in our day to day life which can be connected to science, to research, and never stop learning. So the teacher or a researcher is a continuous learner. Next slide. So embrace the challenges, keep trying, persist. Persistence is very, very important, and keep making efforts till you are a master. learn from the criticisms. So many a times, we submit a research proposal or submit a manuscript, and we say referees ने ऐसे ही questions बना दिए. So that could be true to a point. I don't deny that. But rather than going into that negativity or a negative mode, let's try and look at the critical points which the referees have made and try and improve ourselves, learn from it, improve and modify your research proposal or your manuscript for it to be published. And always look at role models. Always be so, rather than going into negative emotions like jealousy, like envy, rather than that, we could always look at it as a motivational thing, and try and imbibe their characteristics and be as successful as them. Next slide. So, if I so this was something which I gathered a few years back. Maybe we have more data on it. So most of the times, so the rejections are due to two things. So 40% rejection is the approach to the problem, the identification of the research gap, justification of your hypothesis, justifying why you are trying to do it, and another is competency of the investigators. So for the approach to the problem, I think we can handle it by improving our research proposal. And competency of the investigators का answer है look for collaborators. Try and make your own research team, and do not shy away for asking for help. What I think during my several years into research is that I don't know, we are in India, I feel, because I see lots of collaborations abroad, we are very skeptical. We do not trust each other, and at times we are disillusioned and disheartened कि ले उसने तो कुछ किया ही नहीं, he or she was one of the co-investigators, or he or she, I have given authorship to this person and he or she did not contribute. But what I want to tell you here is that even if you have done 99% of the work, but that 99% is not 100%, and if it is not 100%, it is not publishable, or I cannot get the funding. So to make it 100%, maybe I need a contribution of minor 1% from someone. So even that 1% is important for me. That is just to so what I reiterate here is the positive frame of mind, the positivity in research or in our attitudes overall would help us. And then the infrastructure could also be one thing, but if you can uh, collaborate with people where you could justify the research environment also, so all of that can be handled. Next. So never give up. And I don't know if you've read the book Tipping Point. So what it says is, hum sabne takdi tula to dekhi hi hai, and they say it is when it is about to at one time there is an equilibrium, and just if you put even one grain on one side, so that side would be heavier than the other side. So that is what tipping point is. So many a times we maybe we were very near to our tipping point and we got discouraged. So you never know when your tipping point is coming. So keep trying, keep adding more effort to it till you reach that point when it would be downhill, and it could be so very there could be so you could start reaping the benefits of your hard work. Next. So there is no secret to writing a research proposal. Of course, you need an innovative idea and lots of common sense, I would say. And then you have to have strike a balance between the budget you are proposing and the work you are proposing. Next. So there are no rules. So what applies in one case may not apply in another. What I try and tell you here may not apply in your situations, because there are always different situations. But do not miss out on opportunities. So the lady luck may not strike again, and there may not be a group again, and there may not be a, also the question you are trying to ask today may not remain valid in a year or so when somebody answered that question. So always, capture the opportunity, and that's the answer. Next. So I would just take you across a few examples where I have tried to collate what I did, what technology transfer was there, and what publications were produced. Hope I'm not running late. Next slide, please. So I think we can leave this next. So a science of today is the technology of tomorrow. So as pharmacists, I think we are very lucky to belong to an application science where all of what we do has applications, and we can always end up bringing in technologies and products. Next. So this is the first technology transfer I did, where we were looking at all trans retinoic acid, which is a very beautiful anti-acne, antioxidant molecule. But you talk of the problems, and all of them are here. It has poor solubility. It is highly degradable. Even photodegradation and oxidation is there. Most of the patients feel irritation, and it is also photosensitive, that you cannot apply it during the day, and hence the topical delivery is very, very difficult. And what I tried to do was I encapsulated it into nanoparticles, lipidic nanoparticles, because it was a lipophilic molecule, and we could improve the solubility, the stability, and because of the occlusive effects of the lipidic nanoparticles, we could improve its permeability and achieve a controlled release. And as a result, there was no irritation. Next. So this is a product which has come up in the foreign market, some Southeast Asian countries, and I think this year we'll be launching it in India also. Next. So I just wanted to show that since it had a very poor stability, but the product which we developed, we could establish its accelerated stability for 6 months and also long-term stability for 1 year. Next. And we could show its permeation even up to 12 hours to the skin layers. Next. So this was the second technology, which was on antifungals, and the azole antifungals. There is a great problem with the introduction of resistance and recurrence in fungal diseases, because most of these molecules, either they are fungistatic, one, and then because the effect fungistatic to fungicidal is concentration dependent, they have poor permeability across the skin, and the oral delivery, though most of these azoles have a very good binding in the skin proteins, but there are a lot of side effects associated, and as a result there is a poor compliance. So what we did was we developed novel nanostructured lipidic systems, which were lipopolymeric systems, and there was improved compliance and enhanced uptake by the fungi, which we could establish in a series of research. So two of my PhD scholars worked on this. We already have a patent granted on this. Next. So we could bring out several publications. So the first student, she developed the delivery system, and at that time we were evaluating its ocular delivery, but this research was on the topical delivery of ketoconazole, which was put into lipidic nanoparticles. Next slide. And what I want to show here is that it was a collaborative work where I combined with collaborated with while I was in US for my Fulbright fellowship with the labs there, and then even here in IIT Ropar, we did the optimization studies. We had an optimized formulation because we wanted to translate it to the industry. And then this is the temp picture. Next slide. And this was something new which we did in okay, no, this is the uptake into the fibroblasts. Next. And then this was another paper which was in drug delivery and translational research. So this logo, this is the logo I have developed for my lab, from innovation to reality. Next. So here, why I've highlighted this is that how you write an abstract and how you write your introduction and things like that. So in the abstract, what I usually do is that first you make your entire, manuscript, or you just collect all of the experiments which you have done and the results. So once you have that, maybe you can jot that down and just put them together in an abstract. But abstracts usually have to be short, succinct, and you have to adhere to a word limit. So once you have a framework of maybe 500 or 700 words, then you try and put them all together so that you convey everything what you have done. You highlight what new you did in this work and put that all together in your abstract. So here what I showed was that it is an optimized formulation. Then I showed that these experiments were done, size distribution, zeta, DSC, and so forth. Then I highlighted that I have done the ex vivo permeation and drug deposition both in the animal and the human skin, and the in vivo dermatokinetic studies also, then the stability studies, and then some confocal Raman spectroscopy was something which was new, which was done there. And for today's publication, even if you have all the in vitro and the in vivo data, still that is not enough unless you have one or two novel, experiments which have been put into your research. Next. So, as I said, it was the attenuated transmission reflectance combined with FTIR. This was one work, and the other was confocal Raman spectroscopy, which we did in this, where the dermatomed human skin was exposed to the ketoconazole loaded solid lipid nanoparticles, and ex vivo permeation experiments were run, and then using a probe and ATR FTIR, we identified that the nanoparticles as well as ketoconazole. We developed the probe or the signal for the ketoconazole as well as the solid lipid nanoparticles, and we could show that the signal is there even up to the viable stratum corneum. Next, viable epidermis. So this slide shows that we did the in vitro release data where we showed that ketoconazole solid lipid nanoparticles were showing controlled release, and this was then complemented with ex vivo permeation studies where we showed that there was an improvement in flux as well as the amount of drug which is retained within the skin. That would be a more important thing in case of topical formulations where you are trying to deliver the molecule to the skin. So rather than the flux, the amount which is retained in the skin is important. And then the last graph shows the pharmacokinetic, in vivo pharmacokinetic data. Next. So the third technology transfer was in case of probiotic formulations. This is again an area which is very close to my heart. And recently in Nature, we have been seeing so many publications coming on the microbiome and its role in various diseases, health, obesity, diet, the diet preferences, the gut-brain axis we've been already talking about. And now, so this work was on the skin brain axis or the importance of skin. So so people are already talking that the in the human body the number of mammalian cells is outnumbered by the symbiotic bacteria which are growing on the skin or in the gut. So as a result, the immune responses may be monitored or modified because of this microbiome. So manipulating the microbiome from the pathogenic or the unfavorable side to the favorable side can be an answer to several problems. So taking this cue, but then probiotics have been there, but they are unable to modify the existing microbiome in human, because they say that it is always a transient change which is possible. So what I took as an hypothesis is that if I can develop a means or a method where
Hello, am I audible? Am I audible? Okay, so if you are able to deliver the organisms live and in some way where they are slowly released and they can establish themselves on the skin or the gut, then you can maybe manipulate the microbiome. So this was a publication we got an expert opinion on drug delivery. Next slide, please. Yeah. So again, this is what I wanted to highlight. So how? So there were a few things which would go into the introduction, as I said. So the first was the introduction to the skin and the importance of the microflora. Then, if there are any infections, how do you manage them? What are the existing, treatment options? What are the issues with those existing options, and how can probiotic delivery be an answer? And what are the challenges to deliver the probiotic onto the skin? Next. So then the introduction would end with what we have done, what experiment, like what delivery system was developed, what experiments were done to prove the hypothesis, how were they evaluated, and then here I had so what was the novel thing here, or what was the new experiments which we did here was that we needed to have a formulation where we would not need to add a preservative from outside. Why? Because that preservative could be harmful to the probiotic bacteria, because we were trying to incorporate the live bacteria. And then but at the same time you want the formulation to not support growth from any contaminating organisms, so we developed a formulation which was self preservative. Next. So this is what we did. We developed a new emulgel system, which was an emulsion as well as a gel, and these are the studies we did. Then, since it was a new delivery system, so we wanted to check its cytotoxicity as well as in vivo toxicity. And the type of experiments we performed were that we proposed that if we keep the water activity of the product low, then it would be self-preservative. Then we did the excision wound studies to show that it is effective in skin infections, or maybe it is a good wound healing agent. And then it was so the probiotic which was used were spores. So it was important that the spores, upon application on the skin, germinate, grow, and establish themselves. So we did some germination studies here. And then to prove that the formulation was self preservative, we did the challenge test. Next. This is the FESM of the formulation. Next. So these are the studies which proved that the formulation upon application on the skin would germinate. So the pictures show, the first picture shows that they are just coming out of their spores, and at around 24 hours they are completely germinated. Next. So this was an out of box concept. Most of the probiotic products which are on market contain only the metabolic end products of the probiotics and do not contain any whole cell probiotics. So this was something new which we tried to present here. Next. So in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. That is what Einstein says. So you have to have a challenge, and then you can try and find the answer, and that is your opportunity. Next. So I conclude here is, do your homework, read, and read. That is one of the important messages here. There is no such thing as good luck, it is all hard work. Try again, I already discussed. So research has to be a passion, and that passion should drive you. Only then can you do good research, whether it is writing a research proposal, getting a funding, getting published, or doing good research. Then so they say that either you do what you love, or you start developing love for what you are doing. So either ways can work. So but you must love your work and your workplace, and you have to strike a piece. You could be happy just teaching, you could be happy by not doing research. But if research gives you pleasure, then you do not need to compare yourself with others. Maybe someone is not doing research, but that is their calling. Your calling is to do research. That is what gives you gratification. So you have to strike your own peace and let nothing limit you. There should be no mental blocks, and you have to come out of your comfort zone. Sincerity and integrity, I've already highlighted. Please do not shy away from negative answers or negative results. If you want, you can publish them, and do not promote your students, and do not be harsh on them if they get negative results. Sit with them, reassure them, and try to find the answers. So when you do hard work, when you do lots of literature study, you always develop a clarity of thought and speech. Then I'm a big believer. You could call it nature, you could call it divinity, you could call it ether. So many a times, when you are not finding answers, just throw your questions into the ether, and many a times you just have your eureka moment. So that eureka moment could be God, could be nature, could be anything. So, and every answer exists in nature, because nature is highly organized, highly systematic. And but we just need to look at the right place and keep looking till we get our answers. Next. So thank you. So get started. So just talking is not enough. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We have one question from Prakash Mulve. What are the programs are going on by Indian government to excel the research in pharmacy?
So, as such, maybe there were not very many programs earlier, but recently, this budget, there is a stress on pharma innovations, because the government and the society realize the importance of pharmacy, and India has come up as the pharmacy of the world. And this in this budget, there have been 2 points. One is on the medical devices, diagnostics, and the second stress is on pharma innovations. So that could be one area where we could all step in. And there is always a mandate of the government of India. So this time, I think the major mandate is now antimicrobial resistance. So again, diagnosis as well as the therapeutics. So this is again where we all can contribute. It could be new drug discovery, it could be in silico drug design, it could be repositioning of drugs, it could be formulation design to improve efficacy of the drugs. So there are n number, and it could always be the diagnostics to diagnose infections or pre-diagnose infections, or identify the population, the patient pool, which is predisposed to those infections. So we could do n number of things. Thank you. Yes, you can publish negative results. As I said, Elsewhere has one journal running on negative results, and I think recently I saw one more publication house which has come up with negative results. And even if that is not a specific journal, still we can always, communicate our work where we got negative results. And you must include, if you are unable to, even if you can explain or not explain. So in research, in master's thesis, you have limited time, and at times at the end of the year, you realize that you did not get the results you were expecting. So there is no harm in mentioning those negative results, and you could conclude by saying that maybe this was a flaw in our methodology, and maybe the next year's research can include these experiments, and maybe we will get the correct answers, or this is where we went wrong. uh, that there is no harm in accepting that and publishing that in the thesis. And in case you did not find the answers, then you can always throw it open to the scientific community, that strangely we observed these things, so this is just an observation, and we could not explain our results. So please own those results. If you are confident that you performed correctly, and if you think you did not perform correctly, then also we can mention it in our thesis. So components of a good research proposal, I think I discussed, is the important thing is to identify a research gap which is relevant. And then once you have that research gap which is relevant to today's work, then the second thing is how you will answer that, how you would fill that gap? What experiments or what are you bringing on the table which can address that research gap? So that would be two important components of a good research proposal.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
As you are rightly quoted, research is a systemic effort to gain new knowledge. Ma'am, you have explained the research proposal from flowchart, from finding a research problem, from literature pool to the commercialization of research output. She has not only discussed the ways to succeed in getting a research grant, but also enlist major reasons for rejection of research proposal, like nature of problem, approach to the problem. If you know you are on right track, if you have inner knowledge, then nobody can they say. Ma'am, your journey in research is really very inspiring for us, a budding scientist. Thank you so much, ma'am, for enriching our knowledge regarding research proposal and technology transfer. Thank you so much, ma'am. At the end, by looking your research journey, I want to say, let us choose for ourselves our path in life, and let us strew that path with flower. Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, accept our certificate of appreciation as a token of love.
Thank you. So, of course,
Thank,
yes, each one have their own journey and each one have their own calling, and let's do that. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Can I leave?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.